I met Jessica, my wife, well, ex-wife now, about 8 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. She was vibrant, funny, and seemed to have this magnetic energy that pulled everyone in. We quickly became one of those couples people envied, always holding hands, whispering inside jokes, and having, what I thought, was a pretty fantastic sex life. For the first couple of years, it was all roses and sunshine. We traveled, we laughed, and we had these big plans for the future. Looking back, though, I realized there were warning signs. It was little stuff at first, the way she would shut down whenever I asked about where she'd been if she came home late, or how she'd suddenly have a short fuse over small things, like me forgetting to pick up milk on my way home. I brushed it all off, chalking it up to everyday stress. But eventually those small quirks started feeling bigger, more serious, like there was something she wasn't telling me. The nights of her coming home past midnight became more frequent. She started locking her phone and acting cagey if I even glanced in its direction. Whenever I tried to talk about these changes, she'd blow up or twist it around on me, like I was some overbearing guy who didn't trust his wife. I wanted to trust her. I really did. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew something was off. I still remember the exact moment I realized something was seriously wrong. It was a random Thursday night, and I was rummaging through the junk drawer in the kitchen looking for a spare charger. That's when I found a receipt for a fancy restaurant neither of us had ever mentioned going to. The date on the receipt was from last Saturday, when Jessica had told me she'd been at her friend Alexis's house for a girls' movie night. At first, I tried to reason it out. Maybe her friends wanted to do something different, and grabbed dinner at that restaurant. But a quick glance at the receipt showed 2 entrees, one of them a steak dinner with all the sides. Jessica doesn't even eat red meat. And the total was definitely more than just a casual dinner among friends. I felt this sudden surge of adrenaline, like my body was screaming at me that this was the proof I needed. I tried to put it out of my head until I had something more concrete, but you know how your gut can keep poking at you. I ended up texting Alexis later that night, just to casually ask how their little get-together went. She responded with something like, "Oh, we just ended up staying in, drinking cheap wine and rewatching Mean Girls for the 1000th time." That was the moment my heart sank. Jessica had lied. And for the first time, it really hit me that it wasn't just her mood swings or her phone secrets. It was real, traceable deception. I confronted her that night, but she brushed it off like I was being paranoid. I went to bed feeling unsettled, and the next few days were weird. She was super nice, overly affectionate, almost like she was trying to cover her tracks. I wasn't letting it go, though. I knew I needed more than a suspicious receipt to confront her head-on. A few days after finding that receipt, I was sitting at my desk scrolling through social media, half out of boredom, half hoping for more clues. That's when I noticed a direct message request on my Instagram from someone I didn't recognize, a guy named Kevin. Now, Kevin's profile picture was just a random selfie with a baseball cap, so he definitely wasn't on my friend list. His message started off polite enough, saying something like, "Hey man, sorry to bug you, but I think you should see this." He attached a screenshot of Jessica's Snapchat story from the previous weekend, except it wasn't posted publicly. It was only sent to him, and probably a select few. The screenshot showed Jessica sitting in a car next to some guy whose face was only half visible, but it sure as hell wasn't me. They were parked in front of that same fancy restaurant I'd seen on the receipt. I felt a rush of heat climb up my neck. It's like I couldn't process it fast enough. My mind was running a mile a minute, trying to rationalize. Maybe it's just a friend, maybe it's her cousin or something I never met. But deep down, I knew better. There was a caption on the story, too, something tacky like, "Living my best life with Bae." And trust me, she never once referred to me as Bae in all our years together. I messaged Kevin back, asking how he knew Jessica. He told me he was just an acquaintance through some work event, and she must have added him on social. He'd seen the post, realized it was kind of shady since he knew she was married, and decided to do the right thing and give me a heads up. That's when it all clicked. Jessica wasn't just lying about dinners with friends, she was flaunting her affair to a select group of people, almost like she thought I'd never find out. Let me tell you, I felt a knot in my stomach that was so tight, I thought I might throw up. And I was pissed, livid really. But mostly I was hurt. That was the moment the suspicion turned into full-blown certainty. There was no denying it now. Jessica was cheating on me, and doing it brazenly. I knew I had to confront her, but I wanted to be smart about it. So I took screenshots of everything, saved the messages, and started compiling my own little "Jessica is a liar" file. It felt insane, like something out of a spy movie, but I didn't see another way. I wasn't going to let her gaslight me again. I needed indisputable proof so she couldn't wriggle out of it with one of her manipulative mind games. And oh boy, did I have plenty of ammo now. I messaged Kevin back, asking how he knew Jessica. He told me he was just an acquaintance through some work event, and she must have added him on social. He'd seen the post, realized it was kind of shady since he knew she was married, and decided to do the right thing and give me a heads up. That's when it all clicked. Jessica wasn't just lying about dinners with friends, she was flaunting her affair to a select group of people, almost like she thought I'd never find out. I'll never forget the night I finally decided I wasn't going to tiptoe around Jessica's lies anymore. I waited until she got home, no more of those half-hearted attempts at cornering her when she was distracted. This time, I wanted her full attention. She came in around 8 p.m., breezing through the door like nothing was wrong, humming some pop song like she was the happiest person on earth. The moment she saw the look on my face, though, she paused. I guess she picked up on the anger practically oozing out of me. I didn't even give her a chance to speak. I calmly set my phone on the kitchen counter, opened the gallery, and showed her the screenshots one by one, the restaurant receipt, the text from Kevin, that stupid Snapchat story. She went from looking smug to wide-eyed and defensive in record time. At first, she tried to shrug it off. She claimed the restaurant receipt was from a dinner she bought for a coworker who forgot their wallet. She said the Snapchat story was old, apparently reposted as some throwback. Total bullshit. And then she started crying. Like, full-on crocodile tears and trembling voice. She swore she wasn't cheating, that she'd never do something like that to me, that Kevin was just some creep trying to ruin her life because she had rejected his advances. Or something equally ridiculous. But I stood my ground. My voice was shaky. I was furious, but I also felt like I could break down at any moment. I told her I wasn't buying it, that she'd been lying for months, and I deserved the truth. That's when she flipped the script and started yelling at me, claiming I was controlling, that I never gave her enough freedom, that I didn't fulfill her needs, both emotional and sexual. It was as if she was trying to pin her betrayal on me. I remember feeling this sudden urge to laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was the most predictable, manipulative stunt she'd ever pulled. She stormed off to the bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it. For a second, I just stood there in the hallway, staring at the door like an idiot, wondering what the hell had just happened. Part of me wanted to break the door down and demand she talk to me. Another part of me just felt numb. This was the woman I'd planned a life with. And here she was gaslighting me, twisting the narrative to make me look like the villain. Eventually, I just went into the living room, sat on the couch, and replayed the confrontation in my head, over and over. I knew our marriage was falling apart, but I never thought it would be so ugly. The things she said, the contempt in her voice, it rattled me. And even though I was 100% convinced she was cheating, some small part of me still wanted her to say it wasn't true, to take it all back. To tell me this was one giant misunderstanding. The next morning, Jessica acted like nothing even happened. She strolled into the kitchen, grabbed a cup of coffee, and started scrolling through her phone as if we were in some sitcom where last night's drama never made it into today's script. I felt a surge of anger bubble up in my chest, but I tried to play it cool. I was determined not to let her gaslight me or brush this under the rug. I eventually worked up the nerve to ask, "So, are we going to talk about last night?" She looked up, rolled her eyes, and mumbled something about being late for work. Then she just grabbed her keys and left. If that wasn't a slap in the face, I don't know what is. Over the next few days, we barely exchanged words. I spent a lot of time sleeping on the couch, or sometimes even in my car when I just couldn't stand being under the same roof as her. It was like living with a stranger, an angry, manipulative stranger who still had the audacity to tell me she had needs that I wasn't fulfilling. There was this one night where she tried to push for sex, almost like she was testing my loyalty. I remember looking at her and feeling this mix of disgust and pity. It was as if she believed one night of hooking up would magically fix everything. I said no, and she stormed off again, muttering under her breath like I was the bad guy. What really got me was how she started twisting the narrative to our friends. A few of my buddies texted me, saying they'd heard from her that I was going through a paranoid phase, and accusing her of wild stuff. One of them even asked if I was struggling with mental health issues. That stung, man. Jessica was slowly painting me as a delusional husband who couldn't tell fact from fiction. Meanwhile, she was still sneaking around with whoever the hell this bae dude was. I found myself bouncing between complete rage and an almost pathetic sadness. Sometimes I'd fantasize about just leaving everything, house, bills, memories, and moving to a new city where nobody knew me or my baggage. Other times I'd start writing out a script in my head, imagining how I'd finally confront her in some epic showdown that would leave her speechless. But life isn't a movie, and the next couple of weeks proved that fact more than ever. Because that's right around the time I got the letter, a letter that changed everything I thought I knew about Jessica, our marriage, and even my own future. But I'll get to that in the next part. It's a doozy, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. A couple of weeks after the big blowout, I was sitting at the kitchen table mindlessly flipping through the mail. Usual junk, credit card offers, random flyers, a bill or two. Then I saw this plain white envelope with no return address, just my name scrawled on the front in shaky handwriting. I almost tossed it aside, thinking it was some marketing gimmick. But something about it felt off. I opened it up, and inside was a single sheet of paper. The letter started with, "You don't know me, but I know Jessica." My heart started pounding so hard I thought it might rip through my chest. The writer introduced herself as Amanda, someone I'd never heard of before. She claimed to be the wife of the guy Jessica had been hooking up with. She said she found out about the affair through receipts, text messages, and some suspicious hotel charges. Sound familiar? At first I was skeptical. Like, is this some twisted prank? But then Amanda dropped details only Jessica or her secret boyfriend would know. The nights they'd stayed at this motel off Highway 6, the black Lexus he drove, how Jessica would wear a red dress he'd bought her. Things I'd never even heard of before. She went on to say she didn't blame me for anything and that she was furious at her own husband for betraying her. But more than anything, she wanted me to know the truth, that this affair hadn't just been a one-time fling. It had been going on for months. I felt this sharp twist in my gut. You'd think by this point, with all the receipts and screenshots I'd gathered, I'd be numb to any new revelations. But reading Amanda's words, seeing how detailed everything was, it was another brutal reminder that I had been lied to on a level I couldn't even wrap my head around. The letter ended with, "I'm leaving him. You should consider doing the same." It was blunt, like she was handing me a roadmap out of this toxic mess. And here's the kicker, Amanda included her phone number in case I wanted to talk. Part of me wanted to call her right away and spill all my frustration. Another part of me felt a wave of embarrassment, like I'd somehow failed as a husband if I had to bond with another betrayed spouse over our partner's shitty choices. I just sat there at the table, clutching that damn piece of paper, replaying Jessica's lies in my head. Every late-night argument, every suspicious glance at her phone, every time she tried to have sex with me just to distract me from my suspicions, it all made me feel sick. That letter became my wake-up call. It was like a sign from the universe telling me, "Dude, it's time to face reality." Trust me, I wasn't done learning just how twisted this whole situation was. There were more twists, more lies, and even uglier confrontations ahead. But in that moment, holding Amanda's letter in my hands, I knew my marriage was basically a house of cards, one strong gust from reality, and it was going to come crashing down. After I read the letter, I just sat there for a good hour in stunned silence, staring at the paper until the words blurred. I don't even remember how long I stayed at the kitchen table, just replaying everything in my head, the lies, the late nights, the arguments, all of it. After I finally snapped out of my trance, I tucked the letter away in my sock drawer, of all places, because I was paranoid Jessica might find it if I left it lying around. That night I barely slept. My mind was buzzing with a million questions. Who is this Amanda really? Is she telling me the full truth? And why the hell would Jessica keep this going so long? Did she ever love me at all? The weirdest part was, beneath all the anger and pain, I felt a bit relieved that someone else knew what I was going through. Like I wasn't crazy. I wasn't just some paranoid idiot who couldn't handle his wife having a girls' night out. This was tangible, undeniable proof. The next morning, I woke up with a strange resolve. I felt this urgency to do something. Maybe it was the realization that Jessica could walk in at any minute with more lies, more excuses, or more manipulative attempts to shut me up. Whatever it was, I knew I needed answers. So I texted Amanda. Just a quick, shaky-handed message. Hey, this is Michael. Got your letter. Would like to talk if you're free. She responded in less than 5 minutes, telling me she'd been waiting to hear from me, apologizing for how we both got dragged into this awful situation. We agreed to meet at a small diner about halfway between our two towns, far enough away that no mutual friends or random acquaintances would be around. I remember driving there feeling like I was heading to a secret rendezvous, which was weirdly ironic, considering my wife was the one actually having the affair. When I arrived, I spotted Amanda immediately. She was sitting in a cornered booth, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee like she was trying to warm up. She looked just as tired as I felt, with dark circles under her eyes. I took a seat across from her, and before either of us said a word, we just kind of nodded at each other, like, "Yep, this is our life now." She went on to tell me the full story, how she found out about her husband, Derek, and Jessica, how she confronted him, and how he confessed it had been going on for over 6 months. They'd met through some professional event. Amanda's husband worked in corporate sales. Apparently Jessica had done some side gig, or so she'd claimed. They'd been sneaking around in hotels, at fancy restaurants, even taking road trips. Amanda was so furious and hurt, she kicked him out right on the spot. Hearing that, I felt this surge of both rage and relief. Rage because it proved Jessica had basically been living a double life. Relief because now I knew I wasn't alone in this nightmare. It was validating, in a twisted way, to have someone else confirm every suspicion I'd had. Amanda offered to show me screenshots, explicit texts, pictures of them together, even a short video Jessica apparently sent. I couldn't bring myself to look at any of it. The receipt and Snapchat were more than enough to wreck me. We talked for almost 2 hours, pausing occasionally when we realized we were rambling about our own heartbreak and confusion. By the end of it, we agreed on one thing: our spouses had taken advantage of our trust in the worst possible way, and we deserved better. I left that diner feeling slightly lighter, but also more certain that my marriage was done for. Still, I had no idea how ugly things were about to get at home, or how Jessica would react when she found out I had joined forces with her lover's wife. Alright, so after meeting Amanda and realizing just how deep the rabbit hole goes, I knew I couldn't just sit around and let Jessica continue her charade. It was time to take some serious action. But if you think breaking free from a toxic relationship is straightforward, think again. Life has a way of throwing more shit your way just when you think you've got a handle on things. The first thing I did was consult a lawyer. I reached out to a friend of mine, Sarah, who's a divorce attorney, and she was surprisingly supportive. She scheduled a consultation for later that week and gave me a rough idea of what to expect. Spoiler alert, it wasn't pretty. The financial implications alone were enough to make my head spin. But I had to prioritize my sanity and well-being over the comfort of maintaining the status quo. Meanwhile, Jessica seemed to sense that something was up. It was subtle at first, like a shadow passing over her sunny demeanor. She started dressing differently, wearing more makeup, and her attitude shifted from passive-aggressive to downright hostile. It was like she knew I was planning my escape and wanted to make my life as miserable as possible before she left. One evening, as I was packing up some personal stuff from our bedroom, something I never thought I'd have to do, she walked in out of nowhere. Her face was twisted in anger, and she launched into a tirade about how I was trying to destroy our family. She accused me of being selfish, not understanding her needs, and being the real reason she sought comfort elsewhere. I wanted to slam my things to the floor and yell back, but I kept my cool. For the first time, I realized that arguing with her was futile. She wasn't going to admit fault, or even acknowledge the affair. As if things weren't chaotic enough, life decided to throw in another unexpected twist. Just when I thought I was making progress with the divorce, our eldest daughter, Emily, got involved. She came home from college early due to some personal issues and walked into our already tense household. Seeing her, I felt a pang of guilt, not for the divorce, but for how much this entire situation was affecting her. Jessica, on the other hand, used Emily as a pawn, telling her that I was the one causing all the problems, that I was unfaithful in my own ways, trying to turn her against me. Balancing the divorce proceedings while trying to shield Emily from the fallout was a nightmare. I found myself spending nights on the couch while Emily slept in her room, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But Jessica wasn't done. She'd send passive-aggressive texts about how I'd never support Emily the way she needed, how she was trying to protect her from my toxic behavior. It felt like living in a never-ending battle of who could be the bigger manipulator. Then came the bombshell. Jessica decided to move out, but not before leaving me with a final blow. I came home one morning to find that she had sold half of my stuff, things that were irreplaceable and held sentimental value. My car was gone, replaced by some subpar rental she insisted I use until I could get things sorted. It was her way of saying, "Good luck without me." And it hit me just how determined she was to make my life hell. Amidst all this chaos, I found solace in unexpected places. My friends, who I distanced myself from to avoid drama, reached out. They weren't judgmental or condescending like Jessica had hoped. They listened, offered advice, and helped me navigate the murky waters of divorce and betrayal. It was a reminder that not everyone was out to get me, and that there were still good people in my corner. But just when I thought I was regaining some control, the unthinkable happened. Amanda, the other cheated-upon wife, reached out again. She invited me to a support group she'd started for men dealing with infidelity. At first, I was hesitant. Attending a support group with someone who's been through the exact same shit seemed both comforting and terrifying. But something inside me knew I needed that extra support, a space to vent without judgment. The first meeting was eye-opening. There were guys from all walks of life, each with their own stories of betrayal and heartbreak. Sharing my story felt cathartic, like lifting a weight I didn't know I was carrying. Listening to others' experiences also helped me realize that my pain wasn't unique, and that healing was possible, even if it didn't feel like it right then. As weeks turned into months, things started to shift. The divorce was finalized, and while it was still painful, it was a step toward reclaiming my life. Jessica, now fully out of the picture, seemed to be spiraling even more, taking on new relationships, new lies, and new ways to hurt me from afar. But I was moving forward, focusing on myself and rebuilding what had been broken. The unexpected events kept coming, testing my resilience at every turn. But with each challenge, I grew stronger, more determined to create a life free from Jessica's toxicity. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the weight of it all threatened to crush me. But through it all, I held on to the belief that better days were ahead, and that the letter Jessica sent, though it was meant to destroy me, ended up being the catalyst for my rebirth. Looking back, it's crazy to think about how far I've come since that first suspicious receipt. The journey hasn't been linear, and there are still bumps along the way, but I'm finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And to anyone out there going through something similar, know that you're not alone. It might feel like the world is conspiring against you, but there's always a way out of the darkness. Alright, so things have been a whirlwind over the past few months. Between the divorce, dealing with Jessica's manipulative antics, and trying to support Emily through her own struggles, I was barely keeping my head above water. But just when I thought things couldn't get any more chaotic, life decided to throw another curveball my way. It started with a phone call from Sarah, my divorce attorney. She wanted to set up a meeting to go over some unexpected developments. Naturally, I was already on edge, wondering what new drama Jessica had stirred up. When I arrived at her office, Sarah greeted me with a somber expression. "Michael, I'm really sorry to be the bearer of bad news," she began. "Jessica has filed a motion to hide assets you both acquired during the marriage. She's claiming that certain properties and investments aren't part of the marital estate." I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't just about the emotional toll anymore. This was turning into a financial nightmare. Jessica had always been good with money, but I never imagined she would go this far to sabotage our divorce. Sarah explained that we needed to act quickly to gather all necessary documentation and possibly go to court to counter her claims. It felt like the battle was intensifying, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to fight it. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let her win, not just for myself, but for Emily too. In the midst of all this legal chaos, something unexpected happened. Amanda reached out again. She'd been attending the support group I'd reluctantly joined, and she wanted to meet up to share her own experiences. I was hesitant at first. Trusting someone else who'd been through similar shit wasn't easy. But I figured, why not? Maybe having another ally would help. We met at the same diner where we had our first meeting. Amanda looked more composed this time, though the pain in her eyes was still evident. She shared how she and Derek were navigating their new lives post-divorce, and surprisingly, she offered some insights into dealing with manipulative ex-spouses. It was like a silver lining in an otherwise stormy situation. You know, Amanda said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully, one thing that helped me was joining forces with others who were going through the same thing. We share resources, tips, and even just vent when things get too much. Maybe you'd like to join our little group? I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. Maybe connecting with others who understood my pain could make this ordeal a bit more bearable. Plus, having someone else to lean on during the legal battles could be invaluable. Back at home, Jessica wasn't making things any easier. She doubled down on her manipulative tactics, now trying to turn Emily against me more aggressively. She'd even gone as far as threatening to take Emily back to her new boyfriend's place, claiming it was in her best interest. It was heartbreaking to see my daughter caught in the middle of our toxic mess. One night, after another sleepless night spent worrying about Emily, I received a surprise visit from Derek, Amanda's husband. He showed up at my door unexpectedly, looking weary but determined. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Was this some twisted way Jessica was trying to play us against each other? But Derek wasn't there to cause trouble. He wanted to talk, to share his side of the story, and to see if there was any way we could support each other through this hellish situation. It was bizarre, but also strangely comforting to know that someone else was fighting their own battle against Jessica's deceit. We sat down in my living room, and Derek opened up about how Jessica had manipulated him just as she did with me. They met at a business conference, and what started as professional camaraderie quickly turned into something more sinister. Derek had been blindsided by her charm, only to realize too late that he was just another victim in her web of lies. As we talked, a plan began to form. If Jessica was going to drag both of us through this divorce and manipulate our lives, maybe we could band together to hold her accountable. Sharing information, supporting each other legally and emotionally. It was a long shot, but it felt like the right thing to do. Over the next few weeks, Derek and I became unlikely allies. We exchanged notes on our cases, shared evidence of Jessica's deceit, and even attended some of the same legal consultations. It wasn't exactly a friendship, but it was a partnership built on mutual respect and the shared goal of freeing ourselves from Jessica's toxic grasp. Meanwhile, Emily started to open up more. She confided in me about how overwhelmed she felt, being pulled between her parents and dealing with her own stressors at school. It was a reminder that, despite everything, my role as a father was paramount. I had to be strong for her, even when I felt like falling apart inside. One evening, as Derek and I were reviewing some legal documents at my place, the power went out. At first, it was just a minor inconvenience, but then Jessica's voice echoed through the darkness from the front door. "Michael, Derek, we need to talk," she called out, her tone deceptively calm. Heart pounding, I grabbed a flashlight and signaled for Derek to stay back. I cautiously approached the door, expecting Jessica to try to manipulate or intimidate us further. But what happened next was completely unexpected. Jessica stood there, looking exhausted and vulnerable, something I'd never seen before. Her usual confident facade was cracked, revealing a woman who was clearly struggling with the consequences of her actions. I don't know what else to do," she admitted, her voice wavering. "I can't keep living like this. I'm sorry, Michael. I just need help." It was a confusing mix of emotions, anger, pity, and a strange sense of empathy. For a moment, I considered letting her in, maybe trying to understand what drove her to be so deceitful. But before I could respond, Derek stepped forward. "Jessica, you need to take responsibility for your actions," he said firmly. "This ends now." The tension was palpable, and for a second, I thought Jessica might lash out again. But instead, she nodded slowly and turned to leave. As the power flickered back on, I stood there in the doorway, trying to process what had just happened. Was this a genuine moment of vulnerability, or just another manipulative ploy? Either way, it was clear that Jessica was beginning to unravel, and maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to put an end to this nightmare once and for all. Looking back, I realize how unpredictable life can be. Just when you think you've hit rock bottom, something, or someone, comes along to shake things up even more. But with each unexpected event, I'm learning to navigate the chaos, leaning on the alliances I never thought I'd form, and slowly reclaiming my life from the wreckage Jessica left behind. After Jessica's unexpected visit during the power outage, the atmosphere at home was thick with tension. Her appearance felt like a culmination of everything that had been building up, and I wasn't sure how to process it. Derek and I sat in stunned silence as she turned to leave, her vulnerability mixed with a hint of desperation. It was a side of her I'd never really seen before, and it left me questioning a few things. The next morning, I woke up early, still reeling from the encounter. I decided to call Amanda, needing someone to talk to who truly understood the mess we were both stuck in. She answered on the second ring, her voice tired but steady. "Hey Michael, how are you holding up?" I took a deep breath. "Not great, honestly. Jessica showed up last night. It was unexpected." Amanda sighed. "I saw her on the support group forum. She mentioned feeling overwhelmed and wanted to reach out. I wasn't sure what to think. We talked for a while, sharing our experiences since our last meetings. It was comforting to connect with someone who wasn't just a mirror reflecting my pain but was actively trying to navigate through it." Amanda suggested that we both attend the next support group meeting together, offering an extra layer of support. Later that day, Derek and I had a strategy meeting. We needed to stay one step ahead of Jessica's legal maneuvers. Sarah, my attorney, had advised us to gather every piece of evidence we could: emails, texts, financial records, anything that could expose Jessica's deceit. Derek had already started compiling his own files, and together, we began to cross-reference our information. As the weeks passed, the pressure mounted. Jessica became increasingly erratic, oscillating between attempts at reconciliation and outright hostility. She'd call at odd hours, sometimes sobbing about how much she missed our perfect family, and other times lashing out about how I was ruining everything. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, and left me feeling like I was on a never-ending roller coaster. Emily, our daughter, was another layer of complexity I hadn't fully anticipated. She was trying to juggle her college responsibilities with the chaos at home. There were nights when she'd come home visibly stressed, and I felt helpless not knowing how to support her better. Jessica, on her part, was trying to distance her, insisting that I wasn't around enough and that she was handling things fine on her own. One evening, after a particularly brutal argument with Jessica, I found Derek waiting outside my house. His usually composed demeanor was cracked, and his eyes held a mix of frustration and determination. "Michael, we need to talk," he said, stepping into the driveway. We went inside and sat down in the living room, the air heavy with unspoken thoughts. "I've been reviewing the financial documents you sent over," Derek began. "There are some serious inconsistencies in Jessica's claims. She's been hiding assets in offshore accounts, and some of the investments she listed don't even exist." I felt a surge of hope mixed with anger. I thought I was prepared for the legal battle, but this changes things. Derek nodded. "We need to present this to Sarah and see how we can use it to counter her motions. She's not just trying to hide assets, she's trying to completely destroy us." We spent the next few days working closely together, our professional relationship deepening into a mutual respect and, dare I say, friendship. Sharing the burden made it slightly more bearable, knowing I wasn't fighting this alone. Meanwhile, Emily was beginning to sense the mounting tension. One night, she approached me hesitantly, tears welling up in her eyes. "Dad, I'm really worried about Mom," she confessed. "I don't understand why things are so different now." "Can't you fix this?" I pulled her into a hug, feeling the weight of her concern. "Sweetheart, we're doing everything we can to make things better. Sometimes things don't work out the way we hope, but we're here for you." Her innocence and vulnerability added another layer of pain to my already fractured heart. I knew I had to stay strong for her, even when I felt like I was falling apart inside. As the legal battle intensified, Jessica made one last desperate move. She filed for an emergency court order to prevent me from accessing our joint accounts, citing emotional distress and financial instability. It was a blatant attempt to regain control and throw a wrench into the proceedings. Sarah informed me that this was a common tactic used to delay the divorce and gain an upper hand. We needed to act swiftly. Derek and I doubled down on our efforts, ensuring that every piece of evidence was meticulously documented and presented. Amidst all this, Amanda reached out again, suggesting a joint support session with Derek. I was initially hesitant. Mixing our personal battles with new alliances seemed risky, but Amanda assured me it could strengthen our collective stand against Jessica. The session was eye-opening. Hearing Derek share his own struggles and Amanda's unwavering determination to rebuild her life added depth to our understanding of the damage Jessica had caused. It was a turning point, solidifying our alliance and reaffirming our commitment to seeing this through. One night, as I was reviewing documents in my home office, the phone rang. It was Amanda. "Michael, I think we need to meet," she said urgently. "There's something you need to see." Curiosity piqued, I agreed to meet her the next day. When we arrived at her house, she led us to her garage, revealing stacks of photos and printed messages. "Jessica has been communicating with Derek as well," she explained. "She's trying to pit you two against each other, make it seem like you're both unstable." I felt a chill run down my spine. The extent of Jessica's manipulation was staggering. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Amanda looked down, ashamed. "I wanted to protect both of you, but I realize now that wasn't the right move. We need to expose everything, together." With this new information, our strategy shifted. We decided to compile all our evidence, including Jessica's attempts to manipulate both of us, and present it in a comprehensive manner to Sarah. It was time to fight back with everything we had. As we worked late into the night, the gravity of the situation settled in. This wasn't just a fight for a divorce anymore. It was a battle for our lives, our reputations, and our peace of mind. But with Amanda and Derek by my side, I felt a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. Little did I know, the final pieces of the puzzle were about to fall into place, leading us toward a resolution that none of us could have anticipated. After Amanda revealed Jessica's attempts to pit Derek and me against each other, it became clear that Jessica was desperate to maintain control over every aspect of our lives. The evidence Amanda provided was damning, and it was time to take things to the next level. We couldn't afford to let Jessica continue her manipulative games unchecked. Derek, Amanda, and I decided to hold a final strategy meeting at Amanda's house. We needed to consolidate all our evidence and figure out the best way to present it to both our attorneys and the court. The living room was strewn with stacks of printed emails, screenshots, and financial documents. It was like piecing together a jigsaw puzzle, except every piece was a blow to our trust and sanity. "All right," I began, rubbing my temples. "We need to make sure we have everything organized. Sarah needs to see this in a clear, concise manner." Amanda nodded, her eyes tired but determined. "I've already digitized most of it. We can create a shared folder with everything categorized: communications, financial discrepancies, manipulation attempts. Derek, can you provide any additional financial records on your end?" Derek flipped through his files, pulling out a thick binder. "I've got everything from the past year. Let's get this over to Sarah as soon as possible." As we worked late into the night, the gravity of our mission settled in. This wasn't just about divorcing Jessica anymore. It was about reclaiming our lives and exposing her for the toxic person she truly was. The more we compiled, the clearer it became that Jessica had meticulously planned her deceit, ensuring that both of us were left in shambles. The next morning, armed with our comprehensive dossier, we met with Sarah. She was impressed by the depth and organization of our evidence. "This is solid, Michael. We have a strong case here. Jessica won't be able to deny any of this without incriminating herself further." Feeling a surge of hope, I left the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose. But life, as always, had other plans. That afternoon, as I was driving home, I received an unexpected call from Jessica. "Michael, we need to talk," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "What do you want, Jessica?" "There are things you don't understand," she replied cryptically. Meet me at the park tonight, and we can discuss everything. I glanced at Derek and Amanda, who were in agreement that confronting Jessica directly wasn't a good idea. But part of me, perhaps out of residual hope or sheer frustration, wanted answers. After a brief consultation with Derek and Amanda, we decided it was best to decline her invitation. Not going to happen, Jessica, I told her firmly. We're moving forward without you. Her reaction was immediate. You think you can just throw away everything we had? You're making a huge mistake, Michael. Before I could respond, she hung up. It was clear she wasn't backing down, and I knew she might escalate her tactics even further. We needed to be prepared for whatever she had planned next. True to form, the following week brought more unexpected twists. Jessica started spreading rumors in our community, painting me as an unfaithful and unstable husband. Friends I thought I could trust began to distance themselves, influenced by her relentless propaganda. It felt like she was trying to isolate me completely, leaving me vulnerable both emotionally and socially. But Derek and Amanda were unwavering in their support. We attended joint counseling sessions, not just for our individual traumas but to strengthen our alliance against Jessica. It was unconventional, but having a united front made a significant difference. We shared strategies, provided emotional support, and even started documenting every interaction with Jessica meticulously. One evening, as I was going through some of Jessica's old messages to confront her, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. Hidden deep within a series of innocuous texts was a conversation between Jessica and Derek, yes, Amanda's husband. It seemed Jessica had been juggling multiple affairs, not just with Derek but with a few others as well. The extent of her deceit was beyond anything I could have imagined. This is insane, Derek muttered, reading over my shoulder. She's been playing us both the entire time. Amanda looked equally horrified. We need to include this in our evidence. She can't get away with this level of manipulation. With this new information, our case against Jessica grew even stronger. Sarah advised us to bring everything to court, ensuring that Jessica couldn't hide behind her web of lies any longer. The impending legal showdown was inevitable, and it was time to prepare for the final confrontation. The court date was set for the following month, and the tension was palpable. I found myself oscillating between moments of calm determination and bouts of sheer anxiety. Derek and Amanda were my anchors, keeping me grounded and focused on the task at hand. As the day approached, Jessica's behavior became increasingly erratic. She'd show up unexpectedly at our homes, leave cryptic messages, and even attempted to bribe mutual acquaintances to sway their opinions in her favor. It was clear she was desperate to salvage her image, even if it meant stooping to unethical lengths. Finally, the day of the court hearing arrived. The courtroom was filled with the necessary legal personnel, and as I walked in, I could feel the weight of everything that had transpired bearing down on me. Derek and Amanda were by my side, offering silent support. The proceedings were intense. Jessica's attorney tried to undermine our evidence, but with the comprehensive documentation we had provided, it was clear she was on shaky ground. The judge listened intently as Sarah presented the case, highlighting Jessica's pattern of deceit and manipulation. After what felt like an eternity, the judge made his decision. Jessica was granted a substantial division of assets, but it was clear she had little to show in terms of genuine remorse or willingness to mend the broken pieces she left behind. The court also issued a restraining order to prevent her from further harassment or manipulation.